It is really good, and I know the other CEOs will say the same thing, to be able to communicate directly with you, talk to shareholders, see what you're thinking about. So I'm going to bash through this really quickly in the hope that it stimulates some questions. So I'm really here to get some questions and to talk to you. Most of you will be aware that we're building a uranium mine in Western Spain. It's the only uranium mine in the world being constructed today. We're pretty advanced in the sense that we've got kit arriving on site. This is the major crushing circuit arriving on site a couple of weeks ago. So we're basically building the mine now. We're in construction, but we're not fully financed. So I'll explain the financing a little bit later on. And the reason why we can go ahead now, right at the bottom of the uranium price cycle, the uranium price is incredibly low price at the moment, is we've got two very distinct advantages. One, we've got an ore body that can produce uranium at $15 a pound. That's right at the bottom of the world cost curve. And secondly, our capital costs are very, very low. The European Union has funded Spain to build the kind of infrastructure that we need, so we're able to build it for less than $100 million. So those two things together mean that we can go ahead right at the bottom of the cycle. And we've got not a bad ore body. We're starting off with 60 million pounds of uranium. If we keep putting money into exploration, we'll convert at least another 30 million pounds from inferred into measured and indicated. And that'll give us a steady state production of about 4.4 million pounds of uranium a year. And if we look at that, that would put us in the top 10 producer in the world. So we're up there with Rio Tinto and BHP. The reason why we're very popular at the moment is that most of the world's uranium supply, most of the world's reactors comes from three countries, Russia, Kazakhstan and Niger. So we come along and start building a mine in the heart of the European Union, and many of the offtake partners, who are OECD consumers, want an OECD supplier. So we're actually being courted by utilities, and they're willing to pay a very significant premium for our uranium. So at the moment, we're contracting at over $40 a pound, whilst the spot price is around $20 a pound. And just to give you some example of where the industry sits at the moment, the yellow dotted line is the current spot price, $20 a pound. And you can see that 80% of the world's production is underwater. So that's Cameco, Kazatomprom, Rio Tinto, BHP, and CNGPC. So basically, you've got 80% of the industry underwater at the moment, not making any money, and we're coming into production right below that. So I think what we're looking at over the next couple of years is what we call supply-side disruption. And we're already seeing it. Cameco are shutting in production, Kazatomprom are shutting in production, the Russians, and quite a few other operations. So we're coming at a time when supply-side disruption, and what you'll see is that spot price will start to recover. Even though we're right at the bottom of the world cost curve, right at the bottom of the uranium price cycle, we are very, very profitable. These are our projected cash flows. And if you just add up the first 10 years of our cash flows, we're, depending on which case you use, which forecast you use for uranium, will generate over $1 billion in cash flow. That's pre-capex, but post-tax. What really excites us, though, is even though we're at bottom of the cycle, what really, really excites us is the only way China is going to fix up its pollution problem is scalable clean energy, which is nuclear. So we talk about Hinkley Point. Hinkley Point is going to be one nuclear reactor in this country. It will provide 7% of the electricity. China, at any point in time, is building 20 reactors. And so far this year, they've brought 5 on stream. They've got 8 commenced and 8 planned. So the China story is not next year, it's right now. And then what's really interesting, everybody's heard of Fukushima. Japan have 58 reactors, were all turned off. Well, what happened when they turned off the 58 reactors is their electricity costs went up by 25%, and their carbon emissions went up by 50%. So now they're slowly turning them back on. And they've got 5 currently operated, 7 ready to go, and 10 by the end of next year. So we're seeing a big turn on, back on, of the Japanese reactors. And then at the same time, the existing fleet, that's the 228 reactors in the US and the EU, they're what's called coming off contracts. They've got 5, 8, 10-year contracts coming to an end, and they're all going to be recontracting, and that adds up to £1 billion of uranium to be contracted over the next 5 years. And then what's really exciting is, if you believe the electric vehicle targets, the UK government's just come out and said by 2040, Dan will have to sell his internal combustion engine car, he'll have to drive an electric car. And if we all drive electric cars, the National Grid got very, very worried about this and made the point, if we do hit those targets, then we're going to need the equivalent of 10 more Hinkley points, another 30 gigawatts of power. So this switch from a transport fuel, which is oil, to a powered fuel from electricity is going to put huge demands on the, we think, nuclear sector. And if you look at where we are now, we think we're somewhere around here. I was just talking before, the dark blue is the primary mine supply, the light blue is the secondary, this permanent recycling of uranium, but we're reaching this tipping point where those three factors I mentioned, the China new build, the US and the EU recontracting, the Japanese restarts kick in, and then suddenly on top of that, you add the electric vehicle demand. So quite an exciting period that we're going into. We've done pretty well so far. We've come from a starting base 2 years ago. We've raised the necessary money to advance the project to where it is now, and we've brought a lot of big institutions along with us. You'll know some of the names. We're now building the board. We've added Nigel Jones, ex-Rio Tinto, who's the big uranium guy in Rio Tinto, and Adam Parker. He founded a fund called Majedi in London, cashed out of it. He's done very well. Come along to join us, very welcome. We're now part of the British government's DIT's export delegation, part of the post-Brexit plan. So we were there with the King of Spain and the UK Business Forum recently. And I've been doing a bit of PR in the Spanish media. And we've been doing a lot of building social license in the Spanish space with digital and social media. I think you all know the story in Spain, or regional Spain suffered very, very badly. You know, we've got 25,000 people left the province of Castilla y León, and we've got 21,000 people applying for the first 200 jobs. So we're very, very glad to be making this investment, and we're basically rejuvenating a local community. Just to give you some example, is that our local villages here, they've lost 75% or 65% of their population, and so all the services go with it. So we're going to come along, and by the end of this year, we'll create about 150 jobs. By the middle of next year, it'll be 450 jobs. So you can imagine the kind of impact we're having on those communities. And that's it. We're underway. We're building. Happy to take any questions.
Because of, I think just south of where you are, in Salamanca, Al-Mazar, they have some high rates of cancer due to radiation or something like that. It's well noted. Is that any effect on what you do?
Nothing at all. I've no idea where... We've had a lot of radiological studies done, baseline studies done. Basically, it's shown that the amount of maximum radiation exposure for anybody in the pit, working in the pit, in a year would be less than you would get on a single flight from London to Madrid. So it's been deemed unquestionably safe for operation. So any radiological effects for somebody else nearby has got absolutely nothing to do with our operation.
No, this is the question I was asking last week.
Fine. I know.
That's fine.
Fine. What happens is the green movements buy into these arguments, try and make something about it. I can very, very happy to direct you to the studies that show it's just absolutely no issue whatsoever. Happy for you to tell them that as well.
Could you talk a little bit about your deposit and how rich a deposit it is, how easy it is to mine, etc.?
Sure. It's there's been uranium mining in the area since the 1970s, and as I understand it, no radiological effects on either people, cattle, cows, children, fauna, flora, non-recorded. Typically, the grades are around 500 to 600 ppm, parts per million, near surface. And what makes it very economic, although it's a relatively low grade compared to, say, the Canadians, what makes it very economic is it's very shallow. So our Zona 7 ore body has got a grade of about 500 to 600 ppm, but it's only 75 to 100 meters deep. So it's a very, very shallow pit, very low strip ratio, very easy to mine.
Sam? How long a typical
About 5 years.
Okay. And do you have many contracts set up yet?
Yep, we've announced we have 2 in place, and they are 5-year term, and they average higher than $40 a pound.
And does that, how much of your production does that cover?
About, it's in total, if they take up all the options, it's about £4 million over the first 5 years. So it's around sort of 20% of that level. But as we construct the operation and get closer to production, we'll what's called build our book. We'll put more offtake in place.
And how much enrichment, concentration do you do of the ore on site?
Relatively little. It's only a very small percentage when it gets into what's called a yellow cake, where it gets enriched and where it's got some radiometric impact, radiological impact, is when we truck it to France, it gets converted to a gas, to uranium hexafluoride, and then the next step is it gets enriched, and then it's a reasonably toxic environment to operate in. So we're dealing with very, very low tenor, and we're never involved. We've sold it before it gets upgraded.
It's just a trucking operation, really, to get it out from the...
Yes.
Hi, can I just ask, you were mentioning the word financing, and obviously the first 2 or 3 years on your bar chart of the cash flows were relatively negative. So in terms of your expectations over the next 12 months, in terms of that side, what's your plans?
We announced in the quarterly that's just gone that we're in advanced discussions with strategic investors to take a stake in the company or the mine. The documentation is advanced, and all I can say is we made that statement in the anticipation that we're enabled to conclude that at some point. So I think you can reasonably say that it's due, and it needs to be done so that we can continue. So as soon as that's all finalised, we will announce that.
Okay, but you're not expecting to come back to shareholders and say
No.
we need that SXX payment?
No. No.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Thanks very much for coming to the Northwest.
My pleasure.
Can I ask how are explorations going on? There's some talk about, I think you were talking about possibly working with somebody else, weren't you?
Yes. We've explored about 10% of the total area, and we've obviously found a developable mine. The potential is, do we look to go deeper to find more? And the answer is, we can look for more repetitions at surface, which we can do ourselves, which is what we're looking at. What the potential is, and what we made that announcement about, is we're in discussions with a very much larger group to look at doing a very much larger scale exploration. So without getting too carried about the detail of it, all we're doing is the top 100 meters. What they'd be looking at is sort of 500 meters over the whole scale. So different, so like 3-dimensional rather than the sort of 2-dimensional we're doing at the moment. And for us, bringing in a partner for that makes sense, because we don't want to be distracted with big expenditure on that whilst we're building the mine on the surface. So that's in hand. We don't know whether it will conclude, but we're still working on that.
Thanks very much, Paul.
When you presented at ShareSocket, I think it was earlier this year or late last year, you mentioned taking private investors over to actually have a look at this, and nothing's happened on that scene at all. And the second question is, it's a bit of a pointed question: have any private investors been to see this?
Yes, there's been. In fact, I just had an email from somebody. What's happened is, it seems to be everybody who goes on holiday in Spain is a Berkeley shareholder and wants to come and visit the mine, as Stefania knows. So what happens is, when there are existing shareholders, they contact us and say, is it possible to come and visit the operation? And they have. We've probably had 6 or 7 groups. We've got another group next week going to visit the mine. What we don't do, obviously, is pay for them. We'll entertain them while they're there, give them some hospitality, but obviously we can't, for individual shareholders, pay airfares and all of that. So all we say to shareholders is, if you are in Spain, anywhere in the vicinity, and you would like to come and meet with management, subject to them not being busy, then I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay. Any other question?
Yeah, I've got one on the spot price and the offtake agreement. I think the offtake agreement is was it $43 that you've got an how have you managed to negotiate an offtake agreement at $43, which means that for every pound of uranium that you produce, you're getting $43, yet the spot price is $19. How's that dichotomy there? And what are the dynamics of that?
It's good on Dan, he always asks the tricky questions. The reality is the spot market only accounts for about 10 to 30% of the volume of uranium traded. If you are a utility, let's say in the United States, and that you want to contract for 5 years, you can't guarantee where the spot price is going to be. So number one, you're willing to pay a premium. So the premium has always been approximately, historically, $15 a pound higher than the spot price. That's for the privilege of being locked out for that period. Right now, it's slightly exaggerated because the spot price is very, very depressed. So the fact that we're $20 above rather than $15 above is simply the fact that the spot price is very depressed. So it's, in actual fact, for people wanting to contract, wanting a guarantee of supply, it's not unusual in the uranium market. It's a peculiarity of the uranium market that we do that.
Yeah. So when these utilities are prepared. Basically, what you're saying is that these utilities are prepared to pay a premium to guarantee supply. Yeah. Now, in that agreement that you've got in the offtake agreement, if the spot price moves up, does that price that you get in the offtake agreement, does that move up? And equally, if the spot price moves down, does the price that you're guaranteed in the offtake agreement move down?
And you're going to ask the really hard ones. It's not a straight average price of $43, as you probably know. 50% of it's what's called fixed and escalating. So it starts at sort of high 30s and escalates at an inflation rate, if you like, over the 5-year period. The other half has got a cap and collar. So exactly your point. So if the uranium price goes ballistic during the term of the contract, we get a bit of that, up to a cap. But equally, if it falls, we have a floor on it as well as a floor. So there's what's called a cap and a collar. So we basically get a band around that average price for $43. If the spot price goes up, we get a bit more. If the spot price goes down, we get a bit less.
Regarding the strategic investor, you know, this was announced that you hope to bring him in the middle of 2017. You know, are there any problems there? Because there seems to be a bit of a delay, or is this just the way that it is in high-fluency business?
The reality was more than one. We had a few going, and we've got it down to what we think is the one that one should work for us. And we're in the final stages of documentation, and it'll be done when it's done. I really don't want to go into any more detail.
But it's going to be done?
I hope so.
Well, you know better than me, Paul.
We're progressing on the basis that we will complete that financing.
Okay, right.
Just a small note. So I was on site in July to see the Salamanca mine, and also I had the opportunity to meet the management team there. What's something that you don't see is really the team they have got there, which is a fantastic team. The CEO and also the head of all the relationship with the local community. I was amazed by talking to Esther, which handle all the relationship for the community, because, you know, you see on the bulletin board, some people say, you know, there are environmental issues, you know, all the high standard and all these kind of things. But actually, really, the local and all the community, the town, they are really supportive of the project because of all the jobs that Berkeley is creating, you know, for basically a small town that needs jobs. So I think a lot of things that you see on the bulletin boards, you really need to pick them, you know, really carefully, because it's all, you know, things that maybe somebody is very strong environmental people, but they don't even live in the town. They are not connected with the people. So the project is done meeting the high standard in you know, whatever they can do to also see what we can do to avoid any problem in the future. So they are doing all the best to get a project that they won't have anything, you know, any problem going forward. And really, I was really amazed by meeting the team. So if anybody of you is interested to visit the mine, I warmly recommend to just get in touch with Berkeley team, because it's really worthwhile to go down there, see the mine, meet the team and talk to them. You know, everybody talks Spanish and English, you know, is really, would be a really interesting trip.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, that's the end of that then, Paul. Thanks a lot for
Thanks, Dan.
the presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.